Hey there, thanks for tuning into Duckbricks. I'm Chris, and this is the brand new modular building. We got a chance to get hands-on with the designer of the set on yesterday's video, but today we'll be diving into my hands-on review of the entire modular building, the Tudor Corner, taking a look at the interiors, the building techniques, and everything in between. And of course, stay tuned because I will be doing another video shortly on how on earth I'm going to integrate this into my LEGO city. And so, let's dive into an early review of the brand new Tudor Corner modular building. This is looking to be one of the best modular buildings yet, and I can't wait. Let's go. So this is set number 10350, the Tudor Corner. It's the brand new LEGO modular building releasing on January 1st, 2025, and I really like this set. Honestly, after the last modular, I was really curious where they were going to go with the next one. The last one was $300 and rather large and expensive, and honestly not that interesting of a building architecturally, even though the inside was fairly detailed and interesting, but it was a completely different setup compared to a lot of normal modulars, and that's why I was really curious if there would be a return to form for the newest one, and I'm very pleased to admit that this absolutely is. This retails for $230 US, 230 euros, or 191 British pounds, but comes with 3,266 pieces, which is remarkably well priced. Sure, a lot of those pieces are smaller details, but I'm honestly really happy by just how well this set is priced compared to a lot of recent LEGO sets of late. Purchasing this set on January 1st will get you an exclusive GWP, the Corner Market, which is basically a small set that ties into the build. I'll also be reviewing that as part of this review at the end of the video, so if you want to check that out, go ahead and jump to the end of the video if you're just interested in the GWP. I have personally mixed feelings about LEGO including GWP specific items as part of certain sets, and there's no other way to get the GWP other than buying the set. Honestly, I feel like it sometimes doesn't really even make sense, especially because folks who get the set maybe don't even need or want the GWP, whereas folks who don't want to buy the set but want something like it in a smaller form would want the GWP, but I can also see it both sides with LEGO trying to include something special as an extra for buying the set first. Moving into the set itself though, I'm going to start off by taking a look at the exterior of the build, and then we're going to dive into an in-depth analysis of every single floor. There's a number of minifigures, although honestly none of them are really special standouts. The most interesting one is a minifigure wearing a sunflower lanyard, which is what LEGO is trying to do to signify disabilities in sets. It's something they've been doing across Duplo, Friends, and now LEGO Icons, and it's a really interesting initiative for LEGO to introduce a brand new minifigure with that particular torso to highlight disabilities that might not be visible. Of course, the rest of the minifigures are pretty much just using existing pieces, although I wasn't necessarily expecting there to be any super specialized minifigures for this particular set. The focus is on the building after all. Now, the LEGO designers actually stated that this went through a few iterations in the development phase. First off, it started off as a primary focus on a fish and chips restaurant, and there's a little reference to that with a rotten fish in the back of the bin outside, even though the restaurant is now not necessarily a specific fish and chips restaurant and acts as more of a reference to the LEGO Castle Guarded-In set. Speaking of LEGO Castle, I feel like this is a modular building that feels the most like it could maybe even be modified to fit in some sort of a medieval or at least older European style of world, and I feel like that is a lot to do with the architecture and design of the exterior of the building, something that I personally am a big fan of how they were able to pull that off. The amount of detail factored into especially the top layer with the white and black architecture is beautiful, and I love how they were able to introduce a number of really fascinating building techniques when pulling this off. You can just see the different pieces at different angles here to make up the detailing for the side of the walls, whereas this is something that LEGO would have printed years ago. They actually were able to do it fully brick built thanks to new advancements in building techniques, and I'm a big fan of how they were able to pull that off. The reference to one of my personal favorite classic castle sets, the Guarded-In, complete with the LEGO Goat, a true icon of LEGO Castle, is really nice as well. And I'm really happy that this set is actually packed full of a lot of different Easter eggs, and every single decal in it being printed, making the set feel just that much more special. Aside from the white and black detail on the roof, I think my favorite part of the building is the restaurant down to the bottom. The dark green and gold color scheme is really great, and I love that they were able to utilize some of the newer LEGO flower elements alongside the building to really make it stand out. And yes, on the top there is a chimney sweep as well, who has an uncharacteristically undetailed plain black torso, but for a chimney sweep, I actually think that kind of works out just fine. Now, in terms of the building as a whole, I've seen a lot of mixed opinions about this set online. A lot of folks are feeling like the color scheme is a little bit scattered. There are admittedly a lot of different colors used in this build, and the very fact that there are basically two different buildings in one for the set doesn't necessarily help the case of making it a congruent model. There's the haberdashery in the light blue color, and then you have a more traditional style of Tudor architecture here, but honestly, it doesn't really bother me that much. This type of clashing style and color is something that you would see in real life, and I'm just honestly really impressed by the building techniques. I'm not going to give away how they were able to pull this particular technique off with the angled black lines, because I feel like you should actually enjoy that for yourselves, but if you want, of course, you can always pull up the instruction manual and see how it's built. It's remarkably simple in the way it's done. Now, going into the actual interior of the model, much like all of the other modular buildings, each of the floors can separate out, so you have the roof coming off, the top floor coming off, and then the middle section, which is the clock store, which you can only reach on the side staircase, and then you have the bottom floor. There's also a restroom hidden underneath the staircase for the restaurant, which is admittedly a little bit tricky to remove. It takes a couple of tries to get that block of stairs out, but thankfully they do include a little bit of an archway underneath the stairs to make it easier to remove if you actually have slightly smaller fingers than me. But first, let's take a look at the interior, starting off with the haberdashery, which is again a special printed sign and basically is a store showcasing a lot of different fabrics, silks, threads, and clothing for different minifigures. You've got top hats, you have recolors of the older style of hat introduced for the Newspaper Boy collectible minifigure, you have all sorts of fabrics and threads for custom hats to be made, and while this is the smallest location inside the building, it does not take up any room whatsoever. It really is kind of just tucked away into the corner. I really like how it does provide a unique visual identity to this part of the building, and while it may be small, it absolutely is a big part of the outside. Moving onwards to the Old Garden Inn, you can see a printed specialized menu on the outside of the building, and once you go inside, you can see all sorts of different details. The toilet is brick built up very nicely, although I believe that toilet paper roll is hanging on the wrong side for what would be convenient for the minifigures. Of course, it is very cool to see the Technic quote-unquote comma piece being used as the toilet paper roll. I actually think that is a really good parts usage for this, and it makes sense the way they've mounted it to make it more visible. And I also really love how you can actually look inside the door and window of the Garden Inn right there to see some of the interior right through the doors from the minifigure eye view. That's just something I really appreciate. There's even a side section dedicated for the kitchen where you can see a stove and some sauces. You've got some eggs and the traditional breakfast. I think the grill tile is supposed to represent some bacon in dark red, which I think totally works. You've got your cash register and all sorts of different bottles adorning the back of the inn. Who knows what's in those bottles? LEGO will never say, but let's just call it special juice for minifigures. You've got some more printed tiles for the menu on the inside there. Also just a really nice, cozy, almost like a British pub style of vibe. And there is one of those clocks, which you can presume they actually purchased from the clock store up above. This to me feels like the classic interior for a European style restaurant. It really does bring back a lot of great memories of my travels around Europe. I feel like I've eaten and drank at a lot of pubs or smaller little restaurants like these, and I could totally see you ordering fish and chips at a restaurant like that. The gold battle droid legs recolored is a really nice touch for the railing on the top as well. It's actually really cool how they were able to do a recolor for that particular piece to add in as a railing. And moving onwards to the top floor, that's how we get into the clock store, which is a completely different aesthetic, but something that I also feel like has that old-timey vibe that really fits the idea behind this set. Here, you can see the watchmaker is hard at work with a magnifying glass inspecting this latest creation. You have all sorts of different clocks adorning the building all throughout. You have an hourglass in there, which makes sense to have, and just basically every possible design of clock that you would want to have as a brick-built LEGO form has been integrated into this model because it just makes sense to include them in here. You have a grandfather clock that goes all the way down. I love the usage of the LEGO Technic cam element in one of these clocks clocks to really make it seem like it is one of the clock details. I think that is a really, really cool touch, and definitely one that absolutely is a nice little build for a clock. And I can tell the designers just had an absolute blast building these. There's even a little hint at a pull-out drawer with a hinge element being used underneath the table there, and all of that is super cool. You also have a little bit of a storage area here with a vacuum that you technically can use to lift up the trapdoor and see down at the bottom of the floor. The actual instruction manual references some like quote-unquote lore behind the set, where they were talking about how chimneys were put in as aesthetic reasons, even though they don't fully connect to everything, and this is a much renovated building that has been modified many, many times. I'm sure some of that was references to the design process, but I actually find it really cool how some remnants of these are still present, because again, they wanted to add to the lore of a building feeling like it's gone through many iterations, which actually makes a ton of sense for an older style building like this. Finally, there is an apartment at the top of the building with a cat lover. I think this is definitely something that could absolutely tie into the cat lover collectible minifigure that is coming out at the same time on January 1st, but you can see this person is a fan of all sorts of different animals, with 2 different terrariums with printed bugs crawling through, and a special printed shelf in here, which is interesting. Don't really know how I feel about that one, because again, it is a white background printed shelf, but it is on a gray tile, so I don't really know. It's an interesting print, but again, it is probably useful for certain applications. And inside the house, you have all sorts of different areas for the 2 provided kittens in the set to climb up. You have some water and food left out for the kittens, and even an opening door to a very, very small balcony on the outside, just to allow the minifigures to peek out. And again, you do have those old style of windows, which, thanks to the building technique, do take up a few blocks worth of space in there, but because the technique on the outside looks so good, I think it's worth it to have some of the interior space taken up by that. Finally, you have the 2 chimneys on the top, and it does fully admit both of these chimneys are basically just for aesthetic reasons. They don't actually wrap all the way down into the center of the building, and it actually says the chimney sweep was the person who advocated for there to be 2 chimneys, one for aesthetic purposes to preserve the historical look and feel of the building. So I kind of find that a funny tongue-in-cheek reference to how LEGO designers obviously wanted it to look a certain way, but maybe didn't have the interior space to make the chimneys extend down to full length. Altogether, this is a really beautiful building, and I just have to emphasize that, especially in a day like this where LEGO sets feel like they are getting more and more expensive for what you get, this is a really nice return to form, which feels like you're getting amazing value, a ton of pieces, some beautiful, beautiful prints, and altogether, it's just a really nice design for the different colors mixed together for a build like this. I'm a big fan of how they were able to pull this off. There's a lot of great details in the way that they were able to achieve the architecture, and I have very few complaints about this building. I feel like it is one of the stronger modular buildings that has come out in recent history, and I have a feeling that a few years down the line, this might be one of the most sought after ones on the aftermarket, so get yours while you can, because this is just a really stunning design. They really were able to pull this off with great detail. The vines creeping up on the side of the building that I didn't even mention. There are so many details to factor into here. I'm a big fan of the color scheme. I can see why people might think it's a little cluttered, but I think it totally works for the aesthetics. So that's really all I can say about the set. An absolutely glowing review from me. And you know, here on the Duckbricks channel, I absolutely want to keep things honest. If I'm provided a set that I don't like, I will absolutely say it, but this I genuinely do really love. Now, talking about the GWP, we have the corner newsstand here. The most interesting thing to me is Jack Stone making his reappearance since like 2001 on the cover of a brand new printed magazine, which is to-date exclusive to this particular GWP, although maybe I'm sure that that is going to appear a couple times here and there. It's kind of like a travel ad featuring Jack Stone, which is fascinating. They also have the collectible minifigure Newsboy printed element appearing here as the extra newspaper, and then they even have some stickers for postcards, which were included in the set. Unfortunately, not all the decals are printed. The corner kiosk is a sticker, but again, given that this is just for a GWP, it makes a little bit more sense. I like all of the different side builds here, and this does feel like a newsstand style of setup that you would see, especially in Europe. Walking around, this is exactly where I would stop to buy some of those European exclusive LEGO magazines, so it absolutely is authentic. And I think it is a nice companion piece to a lot of the other items that we've seen in the modular building. I actually like this GWP a lot more because unlike some of the previous GWPs, like the Ideas Garden had a smaller garden, or the X-Men Mansion had Cerebro, which could be a part of the set, this actually does stand on its own, and that's why I actually like it a little bit better, because those who buy the modular building are actually getting some more value out of this, rather than it being just an extension of whatever set you buy. Overall, I am really happy with this year's outing for the modular buildings. The set is phenomenal. I love all of the details. I was blown away when I saw this revealed back in September for Fan Media Days, and that's really all I have to say about the set. Let me know down in the comments, what do you think of the set? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? And stay tuned, because coming very soon, there'll be a video about me integrating this into my LEGO city. That's all for this video, and bye for now.